Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everybody. Oh, y'all about to talk back. Good afternoon. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris Percy, and I am a field campaign manager with MoveOn.org. Come on, Move On Love. We are a national organization dedicated to making sure we hold these folks accountable for everything they do. Throughout the event today, you'll hear me say good afternoon, everyone. And when I do that so you can talk back to me, okay? And we have to keep the energy high because there are people who are working now to take away wonderful rights and benefits from each of us. So we have to keep the energy high so we can keep fighting. So good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon up there. Good afternoon in the center. Good afternoon over there. Good afternoon. We are here today, as we know, to hear from our wonderful Senator Bernie Sanders. We have been all over this weekend alone. This sweat is not just me. I've been working and traveling, and we just got here, and I am so super excited to be with you because I'm excited to be a part of this fight. I'm excited to be, good afternoon, everybody. I'm excited. I wish I didn't have to, but once you pick a fight, I'm in it. So, without further ado, I want to introduce my co-MC for the day, Nicole Gill, who is a great friend of mine. Over this weekend, we have become wonderful friends. She is the executive director of the Tax March. Please welcome her.
I'm going to try Chris's line. Good afternoon, everybody. It's kind of fun. Okay. All right, guys. It's been a long year. It's been a long year. But we haven't just stood by and watched, right? Everyone in this room hasn't just watched. You've fought. And we're going to keep fighting because Friday night, Republicans in the Senate did something absolutely awful, horrible. Yeah. In fact, they passed this bill at 2 a.m. I wanted to be asleep at that time. Most of us should have been asleep. And they passed a bill they hadn't even seen. All right? 479 pages of legislative text that is going to impact every single person in this room. And our senators, well, Republican senators, so one of yours, didn't even read it. Yeah. So let me tell you the two reasons I'm so upset about this bill. The first is it's going to give 87 million families a tax increase. Yeah. And at the same time, it's also going to take health insurance away from 13 million Americans. So you might be asking yourself, why? Why did we have to do this? Why did we have to do it in the dead of night when nobody's watching? Because the Republican Party represents their donors, not their constituents. As Chris said, we've been on the road all weekend, and it's been a lot of fun, and I feel hopeful right now. I feel hopeful because you're here, we're here, and we're not going anywhere. And yeah. We are not going to stand for cuts to Medicare to pay for tax cuts for the ultra-wealthy. We're not. We are not going to cut Medicaid so that companies can ship even more jobs overseas. Nope. Nope. And I will not stand for cuts to public education to give Donald Trump and his family a $1 billion tax cut. So, Senator Toomey, if you're listening, I'm sure this is what he's doing. Yeah. We're going to hold them accountable, right? Mark my words. Republicans will pay for this. We have sacrificed too much. They will pay. We are going to make them pay. All right? Make them pay. So I want you to do one quick thing before I turn it back over to Chris. I need you to get out your phone, and I want you to program this phone number in. And you're going to save it, and you're going to use it. It's 202. You already have it. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'll say it a couple times. How about that? 202-224-3121. I hear people saying it. Do you know what that is? The Capitol switchboard. Okay? 202-224-3121. Save it, and I want you tomorrow to call your member of Congress and tell them not one penny in tax cuts should go to millionaires, billionaires, and wealthy corporations. That's it. Not one penny. So the number is 202-224-3121. We're going to turn our voices into votes, and we're going to keep fighting. Thanks, guys.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Y'all quiet. Good afternoon. Our first speaker, today we're going to hear from some everyday folks who are doing some great things in their lives, and if this goes through, this bill would affect them in really terrible ways. Our first speaker is Kevin Rooning. He is a graduate student at Penn State University on his way to getting his PhD, jealous, in political science. He is involved in trying to start a union of graduate students at Penn State. Come on. And we are so unbelievably excited to have him. Please welcome him. Good afternoon, everybody. Come on through.
Thank you all for letting me share my story. My name is Kevin Roining. I'm a graduate assistant at Penn State and a proud member of the Coalition of Graduate Employees, one of the newest affiliates of the Pennsylvania State Education Association. Graduate assistants serve a dual role in higher education, one that is fundamental to its functioning. While we take classes and learn from faculty, we also teach undergraduates and work for the university. A Penn State undergraduate would find it impossible to get their degree without the work of graduate assistants. Many of us teach hundreds of students during our time at Penn State. Graduate assistants in so many ways are part of the critical structure of education that keeps Penn State, the United States, the higher education system, and the United States more generally a leader. They do all this while often being paid at or below a living wage. At Penn State, that's less than $21,000 a year. The House GOP tax plan, which my congressman voted for, is an attack on me and my fellow graduate assistants. It demands that I pay taxes on money that I never see so that the GOP can stop taxing the inheritance of millionaires and billionaires. it'll close the door on graduate school for many of the poorest Americans who cannot rely upon support of family or other external sources while at university. The House GOP tax plan is an attack on higher education for all Americans. It taxes tuition waivers for graduate assistants, for the children of staff, and the children of faculty. At times when public funding for higher education is threatened across the country, it imposes new burdens on all those who work to make higher education possible in the United States. The House GOP tax plan, like the Senate GOP tax plan passed in the dark of night, is an attack on all Americans that work by eliminating critical deductions working people rely upon and actually raising taxes on millions of middle-class families. Republicans in Congress have shown a loyalty to donors and lobbyists, not the constituents they were elected to serve. I ask that each of you turn your frustration and anger into action, and your voices into votes. We must hold every Republican that votes for these toxic tax plans accountable for the damage they will do to our education system, to our families, and to our future. Thank you.
Let's give it up for Kevin one more time. Our next speaker is... What? Okay. You guys are going to be trouble down here in the audience. Our next speaker is from right here in Reading. She is a college student where she is paying her own way, like many of us, to get her associate's degree. She's a dreamer and has been a fierce advocate on behalf of dreamers for many years. Please welcome Rainey Leonore Lake.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rainey. I am a local dreamer and activist here in Reading. I remember Bernie's first visit last year. I remember standing on this very stage feeling vulnerable and scared to share my story. Today I stand before you, not vulnerable, but empowered. In September, my biggest fear and the fear of many other immigrant students came true. I am a proud DACA recipient. The DACA program that many undocumented students like myself brought out of the shadows and allowed us to become official contributing members of society. The Trump administration wants to take that away from us. Now my life and the lives of 800,000 documented youth hangs in the balance while we wait for Congress to decide whether we're worthy or even human enough to stay in this country. On Friday, the same people decided that it was more important for them to get a tax break than to pass the Clean Dream Act. With this tax scam, they will take millions of dollars from working class and use it to build detention centers where they hope to put me and many hardworking immigrants. That ain't right. I work, I go to school, I do my best to make a positive difference in my community. The Trump administration and every congressperson who voted for this tax scam wants to take me away without giving me the chance at citizenship. I'm not Rainey to them. They don't see me, but I see them. I see President Trump say that he wants to find a solution for dreamers. But, yes, but they do not take action. The xenophobic attacks on immigrant families are the actions that I see. I will not hide and stay in the shadows, no matter what they throw at me. I'm here to say that I'm here to stay.
Good afternoon, everyone. Our next speaker is the executive director of Make the Road PA, and has been a Pennsylvania resident for over 10 years. Make the Road Pennsylvania is the largest group representing the Latinx community in Pennsylvania. He has spent his entire career as a union activist and a fighter for his community. Please help me welcome Adon Jesus Marie.
¿Cómo estamos ready? That's much better than last time when y'all saw it when I came out. It is very appropriate that we are rallying here today in Reading. We are in a city that has been devastated by the same system that seeks to give billions and billions of dollars to the billionaires. We are in a city that is crippled by unemployment. We are in a city with the second worst funding for schools in the whole country. We are in a city that knows when businessmen get together in Washington, it is our people, our children, and our families that suffer. We are in a city that is not going to be fooled by this tax scam. But we are also in a city that knows how to fight back. When Trump took the presidency, they expected us to disappear. They thought people like Rainey, myself, many in here, they thought Make the Road would disappear, but we have done the opposite. We have stood up over and over again to take them on. When they proposed Proposition 287G here in Berks County, we mobilized thousands of people and we defeated them. We have been on the front lines over and over again to defend the ACA. We have been on the lines fighting against this tax scam, and we're going to keep on fighting. We know what it takes to win. We have to leave out of here today not proud that we came today, but ready to go to the streets and to fight, to take the fight to them at every corner, at every office. They think by doing these things at 2 a.m. in the morning that we don't see what they're doing. But we see it, we're going to organize, and we will defeat them. Thank you.
All right, a little bit more. Let's go. Our next speaker is a student at Montgomery County Community College. Let me say that again. It's a tongue twister. Montgomery County Community College. And she's active on campus. She is a Next Gen Fellow, and she organizes her fellow students. Give it up for Chardonnay White.
Hi, my name is Chardonnay White, and in 5 years, I'll have $100,000 in debt because of my medical expenses and student loans. I have multiple chronic illnesses that need constant attention and chronic migraines that plague my daily life. Without the medications I receive, I would be a shell of the person you see before you. As a result of the Affordable Care Act and the laws we currently have in place, I pay a low copay for the medications that have changed my life. Under the Republican tax bill, I wouldn't be able to afford it. Like many of you, this tax plan threatens my livelihood and my future. I went to a public high school and am currently enrolled in a community college that is in Montgomery County. I'm a liberal studies major, and when I transfer, I will become a political science major with dreams of going to law school. Thanks. With the newly passed Senate bill soon to go to the House, students like me who are financially independent would not have the same opportunities that I had. In high school, I was able to take AP classes, be a part of the arts, and do much more due to my school having funding. With the state and local tax revenues no longer being deducted, I know that students like me will not have the access to education that I was given. I plan on furthering my graduation through graduate school, but a proposed part of the tax plan will cut tuition waivers and cause grants to be taxed as income for graduate students, making it impossible for me and thousands of other students to afford our pursuits of higher education. In 5 years, I will have $116,000 in debt, and I won't be alone. Republicans in Congress must stop playing politics with people's lives and propose policies that help us achieve our country's potential and increase access to higher education. I'm happy to help them do their homework on policies that actually help students and working people. Will you help me? Keep calling, keep rallying, keep showing up. My future and all of yours depend on it. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Our next speaker was born in Allentown, but has lived in Lancaster almost his whole life. His family is from Puerto Rico, and he works to make sure that their voices are represented. He is an active member of Keystone Progress and helped found Lancaster Stands Up. Please welcome Rafael Diaz.
One time for Bernie, folks, come on. This weekend, the Republican Party made a statement. Loud and clear, they told the American people that they will readily sacrifice each and every one of us in order to benefit corporations and wealthy donors. But this is nothing new. It's the apex of decades of failed conservative policies and corporate dominance. Racist economics that are less trickle down and more like a vacuum, sucking up wealth from our communities and directing it straight up to the rich. There's perhaps no place where this has been more clear than in Puerto Rico, especially in light of the aftermath of the man-made disaster of Hurricane Maria. I say man-made because what is natural about cataclysmic climate change caused by the greed of just a handful of corporations? What is natural about a manufactured debt crisis that's led to rotting infrastructure, closed schools, and disinvested communities that have just given the rich more power and left us behind? And the policies that inform this upside-down tax scam are the very same that systematically strip the wealth and resources from the island much of my family calls home. My family did their best to live the American dream. And like so many people of color, they had to work twice as hard and be twice as smart just to earn their place in middle-class society. But that hasn't mattered. Some of them are still without electricity, stuck using a diesel generator to power their homes. My abuela died 3 days before the storm. We didn't know the state of her remains until a week after the hurricane passed, when we found out that because of the storm, we'd have to cremate her instead of bury her against her wishes. This is the kind of devastation that comes from policies like the GOP tax bill. This cannot continue. We're all suffering. We might be tired, but we all must keep fighting against Trump and the GOP. But not only that, we must stand up to any leader who thinks that going back to the status quo is good enough. There is no excuse to live in a world where there's enough resources to go around, but the many suffer so the few can live in luxury. We must organize. We must fight. We must keep going until no one is left behind, until we achieve a world where everyone is fed, everyone is housed and clothed, and we can stand side by side in the beauty of our united communities and know that we live in a country that finally, truly deserves the title, Land of the Free. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. That really is a lot of fun. Okay, I'm so excited about our next speaker. If Chris didn't let me introduce her, I probably would have fought him for it. Before I went on the road with Senator Sanders this weekend, I was in D.C., and we held a close to 30-hour people's filibuster outside of the Capitol. So while senators and members were inside listening to their lobbyist friends, we were outside demanding they listen to us. And my friend Anna, who's going to come on stage next with her family, and her group, the Little Lobbyists, were there through the rainy, cold night. The Little Lobbyists are families with children who have complex medical needs. For them to stand outside in the middle of the night and fight against this plan tells me everything I need to know about it. It's awful, and we're going to fight. And so Anna's going to come up with her family, her sons Jackson and Henry, and her husband Michael, and tell us a little bit more.
Good afternoon. My name is Anna Corbin, and this is my husband Michael and our sons Jackson and Henry. And we brought our friends, the Little Lobbyists, with us today. My family is proud to speak to you as representatives of a few key groups, so you let me hear you if we're representing you today. We represent Pennsylvania. We represent children with complex medical needs. We represent pre-existing conditions. We represent Medicaid. We represent the working class. And we represent families who are worried about how this new tax bill will affect our lives.
Yeah.
My sons have Noonan syndrome. They received Medicaid under the PH95 waiver in Pennsylvania since 2012. But before that, we struggled to afford the cost of their care, and it almost bankrupted us. We lived for years in near poverty simply because our children have complex medical needs. Medicaid saved my family. Our country was founded on a simple ideal that taxation without representation is tyranny. Well, I don't know any members of Congress who are worried about their health care. I don't know any members of Congress who are cashing in change just to buy milk. I don't know any members of Congress who are working hard labor jobs for minimum wage just to make ends meet. Do you feel represented? Because I don't. We have been telling our story to anyone who will listen since January. We have been traveling to D.C. to tell our story to Congress since March. And we have been going to Capitol Hill with the little lobbyists since July to not only tell our story, but to tell stories about children with complex medical needs from all across the country. We won't stop until we feel represented in our government. I ask you today to stand with us when we tell our representatives that not one penny can be taken from children with complex medical needs. Not one penny can be given to the wealthy at the expense of those who need it most. Not one penny can be sacrificed when our children's lives, livelihoods, and lifelines are under attack. Please show up to offices, call every day, and tell Congress not one penny.
Good afternoon, everyone. Did that boy die? I think he died. Okay. Our next speaker is a two-time breast cancer survivor who works in medical billing in Lancaster. She is a mother, and her family is involved in Lancaster Stands Up. She works to overcome the forces of racism, sexism, prejudice, and hate in her community. Please welcome Eliza and her son, Cornell Booth.
All right. Hello, my name is Eliza Booth, and this is my 10-year-old son, Cordell. We live in Lancaster, and we're honored to be here with you today. I have the utmost respect for Senator Sanders for standing up and fighting for all of us. Yeah. I volunteered for Bernie's 2016 primary campaign. He gave me hope then and continues to inspire me now. I'm proud of the work he's currently doing, and it gives hope to many of us that we can have people with integrity in our government who understand their job is to represent us, the people, and not Wall Street billionaires. We are here today to speak out against what is happening in this country. This tax bill that was passed late Friday night is a horrific piece of legislation that will devastate so many Americans. The way the Republican Congress is sabotaging the Affordable Care Act through this awful tax bill is unconscionable. As a two-time breast cancer survivor, I understand the importance of having health care coverage and understand how the burden of medical bills can hinder someone from living life to the fullest. Constant worry about medical debt is not something families should live with in the richest country in the history of the world. The repeal of the individual mandate means millions more people will be uninsured, and this will cause health insurance premiums to rise, but the worst part is that more people will needlessly die. During times like these, it is easy to despair. It is easy to think you are helpless. It is easy to just throw up your hands and say, what's the use of getting involved in our political system? Nothing is going to change. A year ago, I was feeling that way. Then I joined with others in my community, and we started a grassroots effort called Lancaster Stands Up. We have the table in the lobby with really cool buttons, too. Okay. We have been standing up all year, mobilizing thousands of people in our community. Our goal is simple: to bring everyday people back into the political process. We are knocking on doors and listening to people's concerns about their community and their country. We are offering people a way to use their voice for positive change. We tell people that what is happening in their government isn't a reality show. Our government is supposed to be of the people, by the people, and for the people. And at Lancaster Stands Up, we're working to make that a reality. So I leave you with this. We are not helpless. We are not hopeless. Together we are strong. Together we are powerful. And together we can make the future better for all of us. Thank you.
It's your birthday. Let's act like it is.
Good afternoon, everyone. So right before we bring on Senator Sanders, there is an individual that we all know and that I have spent the last few days traveling around state to state with. And, y'all spoiling my surprise. Okay. And this person has shown that her passion is not a put on. There are so many people that sometimes when you get involved, you're like, oh, is that real? Is that true? This woman is truly a woman for the people. Really. I have seen her operate in passion. I have seen her dedication. I have been a fan from afar. She is somebody who has been fighting for labor. She has been fighting for women's reproductive health. She has been fighting for voting rights. She has been fighting for the eradication of wealth and income inequality. She is a fighter. Come on. Good afternoon, everybody. And after this weekend, I personally have become an even bigger fan. She is the president of Our Revolution. Come on, Our Revolution. And she is the founding fellow of the Sanders Institute. Please, people, good afternoon, everybody. 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 Help me welcome State Senator Nina Turner.
Thank you. Love you guys. Ready? Man, it is so good to be among the people, especially on a Sunday. Now, Reading, we know that these are heavy times, and everybody has a right to feel heavy. But I want your heaviness to distract you from the fact that when conscious-minded people unite, great things happen. So we know hashtag the struggle is real, but just as important as recognizing that the struggle is real is recognizing that each and every person in this room, and for people who are watching us via live stream and our sisters and brothers all over this country, hashtag the struggle is real, but also hashtag people can make the difference. So, I bring you good news that a transformation is happening in this country and sleeping giants are awakening. That when we galvanize the synergy and energy of a conscious-minded people, there is nothing that we cannot do. I bring you word, though, from Congresswoman Barbara Jordan, because I want this to inform the comments that I make this afternoon when she said that what the people want is simple. They want an America as good as its promise. And that's not too much to ask. And what the GOP just did a couple of nights ago is the antithesis of creating an America as good as its promise. But guess what, sisters and brothers? The people are coming. There should be a consequence, an electoral consequence for what they did. So come on, folks, are we going to make them pay? Say, make them pay. Make them pay. And this is going to happen now, sisters and brothers. You got to follow me on this. This is only going to happen if we organize. And we got to be ready. Reading, we got to be ready. In the ready position. This calls for us to have some perseverance. And for us to understand that 2018 is just around the corner. Ballot boxes are ready for the people. Because I tell you this, Trickle down is a trick. Trickle down is a trick. It is not okay to balance the budget on the backs of the working poor and middle class in this country. It's not okay. Trickle down is a trick. It is not okay for the mother in Louisville to tell me that her son, who was born with congestive heart failure, that not only does she have to bear a mother's grief in a world that would deny her son just because he was born with a condition, not only health insurance, but in a world, in a country that would deny her son life insurance. Trickle down is a trick. Or for an uncle who is in a rehab center being told by his doctors, too bad, so sad, your insurance has lapsed and we got to kick you out even though we are not finished rehabilitating you. Trickle down is a trick. And it is not okay for our sisters and brothers in Flint, Michigan to this day to still have to deal with the burden of not having clean water. Trickle down is a trick. And it is not okay for our sisters and brothers in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands to be 75 days suffering. Trickle down is a trick. And sisters and brothers, there's so much that they could have done with our money. This is your money. I want you to understand this, that this is nothing more than a power grab, a transfer of wealth from the poor to the wealthy. Your money. And as I have traveled all across this country, our revolution, creating in the vision of Senator Bernie Sanders, the people's revolution. I've never heard one mother, one father, one grandmother, one aunt, one uncle begrudge anybody for having wealth. But what I have heard the people say is that they are sick and tired of excessive greed on their backs. That they are sick and tired of exploitation on their backs. And what type of heartless folks who with a straight face could take away the people's money and give it to the 1% to people who do not need it. But I am here to say, Reading, this afternoon, that trickle down is a trick and we are not going to stand for it. We will not be tricked again. We coming for your seat. Shame on politicians who have the people's power but won't even use that power on the people's behalf. Shame on them. But we got a message for you. We coming for your seat. So I bring you good word this morning. That I know that the champions in this room and all across this country, that we may feel down, baby, but we are not out. Because can I say this to you on a Sunday? That our mission is so high, we can't get over it. And our mission is so low, come on with me somebody, we can't get under it. And that our mission is so wide, we cannot get around it, that we have an assignment, and our assignment is to restore democracy for Lottie-Dottie and everybody. Trickle down is a trick. Can I say something? Can I say a few more things to you? I brought a friend. Man, Senator Bernie Sanders. And this is not the senator's first time here. You know, I was with the senator all along this journey, and, you know, he said these words, and I want you to follow me on this. He said, we are fighting for justice and decency. Understand that, justice and decency. And then he went on to say, he said, politics is life and death stuff. So in the deep way, family, we are together. But I want you to understand what the senator is saying, that we got a lot on the line, that folks are depending on us to stand up and to speak out and to be organized and to use our anger use our anger in a way to have a righteous indignation about what is going wrong in this country. We are fighting for justice and decency. So we are here fighting for life, for you, for your children, and for generations yet unborn. So I want you to join me in bringing the people's champion. Can you stand to your feet? Can you stand to your feet? I want you to shake this room like it has never been shook before as we bring the people's champion to the stage, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Thank you very much. This is a fantastic turnout. I just want to thank everybody for being here. And I want to thank all of the folks who are up here speaking from their hearts and telling you the story of their lives and how we are going to transform America and create a government that works for all of us, not just the 1%. And I want to especially thank Nina Turner. And I want to thank Senator Turner, not just for being with me on this trip and doing a great job, but I want to thank her for undertaking a task which is perhaps the most important work that anybody in America could be doing. She is running all over this country, creating a political revolution. And what she knows, and what I know, and what you all know, is that revolution is not about Nina Turner, it's not about Bernie Sanders, it is about you. Now, the way the system works is the establishment tells people, we have all of the power, we got all of the money, we have all of the media, we determine whether you work or you don't work, we decide whether your job goes to China or whether it stays here. You are powerless, you're nothing, we got it all. But what we are here to say today is that what the political revolution is about is the understanding that when we stand together, they can't stop us. And when we don't allow Trump and his friends to divide us up based on the color of our skin or our religion or where we were born or our sexual orientation, when we stand together, respect each other, love each other, we will create a government that works for all of us. Now, I am more than aware that here in Pennsylvania, your state voted by a small margin for Donald Trump for president. And I'm here knowing that here in Berks County, he did pretty well. I know that. I know that, and that is exactly why I am here. Because today I want to speak not only to those of you who are progressives, I want to speak to some of the people who supported Mr. Trump for president. No, I don't boo. Nope. I understand. Look, in my view, the vast majority, not all, but the vast majority of the people in Pennsylvania and around this country who voted for Mr. Trump, I do not believe that they are racist or sexist or homophobes or xenophobes. What I believe is they are people who are hurting, people who are in pain. And Trump said some things during his campaign that they responded to. That's what I believe. But what I want to tell those people tonight is that virtually everything that Trump told them during the campaign turned out to be a lie. And I think it is increasingly clear to most Americans, including many who voted for Mr. Trump, that he never had any intention of fulfilling the campaign promises that he made to the people of Pennsylvania or Vermont or any place else in this country. So I'm not here blaming people for voting for Mr. Trump, but I am here tonight to give you just a few examples of what Trump said and what Trump did. Now, you may all recall during the campaign, President Trump, as a candidate, said some things that made sense. He said, quotes, he would provide health insurance to everybody. Well, wait a minute. That's a good idea. I believe in that. He said as a candidate, he would provide health insurance to everybody, and I suspect there were people here in Berks County and throughout the state who said, you know what, that's right. I'm going to vote for Mr. Trump. But as president, in terms of health care, instead of supporting health care for everybody, what he ended up doing was supporting legislation that would throw 32 million Americans off of the health insurance they have. Now, health care for everybody is a little bit different than throwing 32 million people off of health insurance. During the campaign, candidate Trump promised that he was going to stop the pharmaceutical companies from getting away with murder. Remember that? But once again, I can understand, and I want you to understand, why people would have voted for Trump. Because you know what? He's exactly right in what he said. The drug companies today are ripping us off right and left. Just the other day, we were in Ohio, and we were leaving the arena where we were at, and a fellow who was working there, with tears in his eyes, literally with tears in his eyes, was telling me, Bernie, I'm paying $1,800 a month. This is a working class guy for medicine I desperately need. In my own state of Vermont, I've talked to older people who are dividing their pills in half. As a senator, we get letters from oncologists who tell us my cancer patients can't afford the medicine they need to keep them alive. So I can understand why somebody would vote for a Donald Trump who promised that he would take on the pharmaceutical industry. But that's what he said as a candidate. As president, Donald Trump nominated a pharmaceutical industry executive to be the head of the Health and Human Services Agency. And this is a guy, this nominee, has spent his entire career jacking up the price of insulin and other life-saving prescription drugs. In other words, when Trump said he was going to lower prescription drug costs in this country, he was lying. Candidate Trump, when he was running for office, he said he was going to drain the swamp, and that he was the only candidate who could stop Wall Street from getting away with murder. Well, God knows we have got to stop Wall Street from the greed that they have perpetrated on the American people, which led to the worst economic downturn in the modern history of this country. Donald Trump was right as a candidate in saying those words. And again, I could understand why people in Reading and elsewhere said, you know what? People on Wall Street are a bunch of crooks. And I'm glad that candidate Trump is talking about taking them on. That's what he said during the campaign. But as president, Donald Trump has appointed more billionaires to his cabinet than any president in American history. His chief economic advisor, Gary Cohn, is the former president of Goldman Sachs, and his Secretary of Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, you know Steve, also comes from Wall Street. Hey, President Trump, you don't drain the swamp by filling your administration with executives that come from Goldman Sachs, ExxonMobil, and big drug companies. That is the swamp. So my point here to the people of Reading and Berks County is I can understand where so many problems out there with a middle class that is shrinking, with people working 2 or 3 jobs. I can understand why somebody would have voted for Donald Trump. But my point today is that on virtually every issue, what Trump said during the campaign is the exact opposite of what he is doing as president. Now, just the other night, on Friday night, I had hoped to be in Louisville, Kentucky at an event like this, but unfortunately, at 2 o'clock in the morning, as I was on the floor of the United States Senate. And I was there along with your Senator Bob Casey, and he and I were trying to do everything that we could to defeat one of the most unfair pieces of legislation ever passed in the modern history of this country. Now, President Trump, just a week ago in Missouri, he said that, he is a billionaire, but that he and other wealthy people will not be the major beneficiaries of this legislation. And he said it's really a bill written for the middle class and working families. Once again, I say to the people of Berks County, President Trump is lying. You know, I wish I could be more nuanced in my words. But a lie is a lie is a lie. According to every independent study done on this legislation, it is very clear that this bill gives huge, if I may use that word, huge tax breaks to the very rich, raises taxes on many millions of middle-class families, leaves 13 million more Americans without health insurance, raises premiums, health premiums, by over 10% a year, and raises the deficit by $1.4 trillion. Oh, and by the way, in a manufacturing state like Pennsylvania, you should know that by lowering taxes for companies that invest abroad, it will make it easier for large corporations to shut down in America, throw our workers out on the street, and move to China, Mexico, and elsewhere. What this legislation does is provide 62% of the tax benefits to the top 1%. Meanwhile, by the end of the decade, 87 million middle-class households will be paying more in taxes. Now, why is that? It is because the tax breaks in the bill for middle-class families expire by the end of 2025, while you will be shocked to learn that the tax breaks for large corporations are made permanent. Now, think about it for a minute. If you look at what is going on in our country, you all understand that we are experiencing today more income and wealth inequality than at any time since the late 1920s. Today in America, the top 1/10 of 1% now owns as much wealth as the bottom 90%. 52% of all new income goes to the top 1%. If you can believe this, the three wealthiest people in America, 1, 2, 3, now own as much wealth as the bottom half of our country. Now, why in God's name, when the middle class is shrinking, when people in Vermont and in Reading are working 2 or 3 jobs, when moms can't afford child care for their kids, when older workers are scared to death about facing retirement, why in God's name would anybody support legislation that provides 62% of the benefits to the top 1%? And that is a question that you might want to ask Senator Toomey, one of the leading advocates. And Senator Toomey was one of the leading advocates, I must tell you, for this bill. Now, the President of the United States, Senator Toomey, will tell you that trickle-down economics, giving huge tax breaks to the rich and large corporations, will expand the economy, it will create new jobs, and it will bring in so much revenue that it will pay for the deficit that it creates. As Nina Turner just told you, trickle-down economics is a trick. It's a fraud. It has never worked, and it never will work. It is just a rationalization to give tax breaks to the people who don't need it. It failed under Reagan, it failed under George W. Bush, and it most recently failed in Kansas, where it turned out to be a total disaster. Now, the Joint Committee on Taxation has told us that this bill will increase the deficit by $1.4 trillion over the next decade. Now, why is that important? It's important for at least two reasons. Number one, it really is irresponsible to leave our kids and our grandchildren with the debt that we refuse to address today. That's just unfair. You don't say to the young people of America, hey, I've got a great gift for you. It's a $20 trillion debt. I didn't have the guts to deal with it. I'm going to let you pick it up. That's irresponsible. But it is more than irresponsible. I want to read you for a second an article that appeared in the New York Times today. Bear with me. Headline: Heading toward tax victory, Republicans eye next step, cut spending. As the tax cut legislation, this is today's New York Times, as the tax cut legislation passed by the Senate early Saturday hurdles toward final approval, Republicans are preparing to use, now listen to this, to use the swelling deficits made worse by the package as a rationale to pursue their long-held vision, undoing the entitlements of the New Deal and Great Society, leaving government leaner and the safety net skimpier for millions of Americans. Speaker Paul Ryan and other Republicans are beginning to express their big dreams publicly, vowing that next year they will move on to changes in Medicare and Social Security. President Trump told the Missouri rally last week, quote, "We're going to go into welfare reform," end quote. In other words, to all of the seniors in Berks County, congratulations. They think that Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid are welfare. Now, I want to read you something, getting back to what I said a minute ago about a president who, when he was a candidate, saying one thing and after the election doing another. This is a direct quote from candidate Donald Trump, March 29th, 2016. Quotes during a campaign speech. Quote, "You know, Paul Ryan wants to knock out Social Security, knock it down, way down. He wants to knock Medicare way down. And frankly, well, two things. Number one, you're going to lose the election if you're going to do that. I'm not going to cut it. And I'm not going to raise ages. And I'm not going to do all of the things that they want to do. But they want to really cut it. And they want to cut it very substantially, the Republicans, and I am not going to do that." End of quote. Donald Trump, candidate. Brothers and sisters, and President Trump, today I'm talking to you, Mr. President. Mr. President, you told the American people time and time again you were not going to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Today, get on the phone. Tell Paul Ryan, tell Mitch McConnell you will veto any bill that comes to your desk that cuts Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. But my friends, what the Republicans want to do, and the Times had it right, this is the dream of the Koch brothers and other billionaires. Their dream from 40 years ago or longer has been to give massive tax breaks to billionaires and to undo virtually every major piece of legislation, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, federal aid to education, nutrition programs for the hungry. Their dream has been to undo those programs, give massive tax breaks to people who don't need them, and take us back to the 1920s. And we are here today in Reading to tell the Republican leadership and the president, you are not going to get away with that. Now, there's an interesting political aspect to all of this, and that is what poll after poll shows is that virtually every proposal coming from the Republicans is wildly unpopular. Wildly unpopular. Their health care proposal to repeal the Affordable Care Act, had 15 or 20% of the American people supporting it. Republicans didn't support it. Democrats, independents didn't support it. You go out here in Reading and you ask anybody who voted for Trump, say, do you think it's a good idea to give tax breaks to billionaires and cut Social Security and Medicare? And they will tell you, you are nuts to think for a minute that that makes sense. So my question to you is, if the American people don't want to throw 30 million of their fellow Americans off of health care, if they don't want to give very large tax breaks to billionaires and cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, why are the Republicans doing these things? And the answer can be found in 3 words: follow the money. Over the last many, many years, especially since this disastrous Supreme Court decision on Citizens United, billionaires like the Koch brothers and others have been pouring hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars into the Republican Party to elect candidates who will do exactly what happened on Friday night. And if you can believe it, in preparation for this disastrous piece of legislation, 6,000 lobbyists were working in Washington to make sure that the corporations they work for get their piece of the pie. 6,000 lobbyists to work on a bill which allows 62% of the benefits to go to the top 1% and to large multinational corporations. Now, it seems to me, when we think about where we are politically, our job is threefold. First of all, we have got to do everything that we can to defeat this horrific piece of legislation. Now, a bill passed the House a number of weeks ago, passed the Senate Friday night. They are different bills, and in all likelihood, they're going to go to a conference committee to work out the differences. That means at a time when the Republicans wrote these pieces of legislation behind closed doors, at a time when in the Senate they did not have one hearing because they do not want the American people to know what's in this legislation. Our job is to tell every American exactly what is in this legislation. And that's what we need to do in the next several weeks. The second thing we need to do is to stand up and oppose all of the ugly policies and all of the ugly tweets and everything else that's coming from the White House. Some of you may have seen a particularly ugly tweet last week, an incredibly bigoted anti-Muslim tweet. And this tweet was so bad that the conservative Prime Minister of the United Kingdom condemned President Bush. President Trump. But can you imagine how absurd we look around the world when we have a president who is condemned by the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, our historical ally, who happens to be, she's a member and a leader of the Conservative Party over there. So our job every day is to fight Trump when he tries to divide us up. You know, historically, every president, including George W. Bush, conservative presidents, Ronald Reagan, understand that maybe the most important function of a president is to bring the American people together. Bring us together. And in an unprecedented way, Trump is moving in exactly the opposite direction. So that's number two of what we've got to do. But number three, we've got to work hard to defeat this very bad legislation. We've got to oppose Trump's policies and his ideas. But number three, we need to do something more. What we have got to do, it is not good enough just to attack Trump every day. What we have got to do is give hope to the American people, inspire the American people with a vision that actually speaks to their needs. In other words, what our job is to talk to our neighbors and our co-workers, to understand the reality of people's lives, to talk to the mom who can't find affordable child care for her kid, to talk to the high school student whose dream it is to get a college education, but she can't afford to go to college, to talk to the senior, to the fellow who has been working for 50 years but is now scared to death about retirement because he has no money in the bank, to talk to the college graduates out there who every month are paying off their student debt in a way that hampers their ability to function. We have got to talk to the American people and put together an agenda that makes sense to them. And one part of that agenda is certainly when we deal with taxation, and we have the vast majority of the American people on our side. When the American people think about taxation today, what they say is, no, we should not be giving tax breaks to billionaires. We have got to demand that they start paying their fair share of taxes. And again, when we talk about the economy, what the American people understand is that while the very rich are becoming much richer, we got people here in Pennsylvania and Vermont who can't make it on 10, 11, 12 bucks an hour. And we got to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, 15 bucks an hour. And the American people, again, across the political spectrum, Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, progressives, understand that in the year 2017, it is absurd that women are working for 80 cents on the dollar compared to men. That we need pay equity, equal pay for equal work. And by the way, we should make sure that it is women who control their bodies, not the United States government. Now, Donald Trump and his friends think that health care reform is throwing 30 million people off of the health insurance they have. Our idea is a little bit different and a lot more popular. Our idea says, how does it happen that the United States of America, our great country, is the only major nation on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a right, not a privilege? And that is why, with your support, we introduced a single-payer Medicare for all legislation. I live 50 miles away from the Canadian border. And a couple of months ago, I was up in Toronto, Canada, looking at their hospitals and talking to their doctors. And we went into the hospital, and they allowed us to talk to some of the patients, some of whom were recovering from surgery. And they said, when we are ill, when we have surgery, our job is just to focus on how we can get well and not have to worry about how we pay the damn bill. And in Canada, they can go to the doctor anytime they want and not have to take out their wallet. No deductibles, no co-payments. And when I talk to the doctors, we had a long discussion with a whole bunch of doctors. They said, look, we are able to focus on how best to treat our patients and not have to worry whether the patient could afford this or that procedure. We do what's right for the patient. Now, if Canada and the UK and Germany and France and all of Scandinavia, if every major country on earth can guarantee health care to all their people and do it at 50% of the cost that we spend in this country, don't tell me we can't do it here in the United States. Trump and his friends think that giving tax breaks to billionaires are going to create jobs. They're wrong, but I will tell you what will create 15 million jobs, and that is $1 trillion invested in rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure. Let's put our people to work rebuilding our roads and our bridges and our water systems. And I'll tell you what else we need. In a competitive global economy, I want our nation to have the best educated workforce in the world. Every day, the economy is changing. Technology is rapidly changing. Most of the new decent-paying jobs now require more than a high school degree. In my view, the time is now when we speak about public education to make every public college and university tuition free. And I'll tell you how else we can create millions of jobs. Trump is dangerously wrong when he thinks that climate change is a hoax. No, Mr. President, climate change is not a hoax. It is the great environmental crisis facing this planet. And we have a moral responsibility for our kids and our grandchildren to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energies. The jobs of the future are not with fossil fuel. They're with solar, they're with wind, they're with geothermal. And our agenda understands that instead of demonizing immigrants, we're going to move to comprehensive immigration reform and a path toward citizenship. And if you are a progressive or a conservative, you understand there is something very wrong when we are spending $80 billion a year at the local, state, and federal level locking up 2.2 million Americans. Think about it for a minute. In America today, we have over 2 million people in jail, significantly, largely, disproportionately African American, Latino, and Native American. We have more people in jail than the communist authoritarian country of China, which is 4 times our size. What we have got to do is, instead of building more jails, we've got to invest in education and jobs, not more incarceration. Let me conclude by telling you what you will not see on TV. And that is, amidst all of the problems, some of which I have discussed, others that I have not, the great crisis facing America today is the very strong drift toward an oligarchic form of society. That is a society in which a handful of billionaires control not only our economy, but our political life as well. And these billionaires, not all of them, but many of them, led by the Koch brothers, suffer from a very serious problem. Now, I know here in Pennsylvania and in my own state of Vermont and around this country, we have a very, very tragic problem in terms of an addiction epidemic with regarding opioids and heroin. Addiction is a terrible problem, and we're going to have to address that problem. But I will tell you, there is another sickness out there that is relevant, in particular, for the billionaire class. They are addicted to greed. You might think that the Koch brothers, who are worth some $90 billion, you might think that one family worth $90 billion might think that that is enough money. You might think that they would believe that you don't have to cut Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and children's health programs in order to make them even richer. But their greed never ends. And our job is to provide a cure for their greed. Our job is to tell them that enough certainly is enough. They've got all they're ever going to get. And our job is to create an economy that works for the children here in Reading, to make sure they get the education and the health care they need. So, brothers and sisters, what we are about, what Nina Turner and many of us are working on, and where we need your help, is help us make the political revolution. In this room, there are great candidates for school board and city council and state legislature and Congress and Senate. There are people who can come together to make sure we have the quality education and health care and environmental protection our people deserve. We are living in a pivotal moment in American history, and the outcome is not yet clear. On one side, you have a small number of billionaires who want it all, and on the other side are tens of millions of people who are struggling for a decent standard of living. Our job is to bring our people together, to become involved in the political process in a way that we have never done before. Our job is not to let Trump and his friends to divide us up. Our job is to stand together. And when we do that, there is nothing that we cannot accomplish. Thank you all very much.